갑자기 쳐들어왔어요.
You might not be able to tell from the fire in her voice, but 83-year-old Nancy To came face to face with terror this week, and inside, she is shaking, and she has the battle scars to prove it.
그래서 이렇게 하는데 침을 얼굴에 뱉어서
In this Eyewitness News exclusive, speaking in Korean, she says her assailant came up to her, nose to nose, then cocked his head back and spit in her face. She closed her eyes, and that's when he punched her right in her nose. She fell to the ground, hit the back of her head, was knocked unconscious. Eventually, a Good Samaritan saw her lying there and came to her aid. When she opened her eyes, she was covered in her own blood.
As much as racism has been so normalized in America towards blacks, I often feel horrible about the treatment towards Asians specifically. The racism they encounter is more nuanced than directed, although since the COVID pandemic has been completely pointed directly at them. But America has made it a point over the years that they want to fit Asians in a very specific and very generic box, because that's how they want to see Asians. Not of all shades and types, but in a way that allows white society to accept them. See, the whiter your skin is, the more accepted you become in a society, so why not force assimilation onto a minority group? So, today, let's discuss the model minority. Hey everybody, it's Sean Roselle back with another video. And if you like these type of videos, do me a favor, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button and also hit that notification bell for further updates that I bring onto the channel. To really get a grasp of the model minority myth, we have to go back to the 1800s, as many Chinese immigrants came to America following the Opium War between China and Britain to start a new life and worked on the railroads, which increased even more following the Burlingame Treaty of 1868, which granted limited citizenship in the United States, but allowed them to be free of persecution from China for religious purposes. But even then, to Western Americans, Asians were seen as evil and dangerous and liars, rising fear over the yellow peril. By 1880, America decided to end any and all Chinese and Asian immigrants from coming into a country by passing the Chinese Exclusion Act, which decreed that hereafter no state court or court of the United States shall admit Chinese to the citizenship, and all laws in conflict with this act are hereby repealed. And any future Chinese immigrants that came to America found themselves in Angel Island outside of San Francisco for detainment and processing, until the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1943. But because of the Chinese Exclusion Act, it did affect the Japanese immigrants that also traveled to the US for a new life. It prevented them not only because of the Chinese Exclusion Act, but also due to the Immigration Act of 1924. From all these acts that were passed down towards Asian Americans, forcing them into smaller communities they called Chinatowns, things never looked promising to the Asian American community. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, over fears and suspicions of Asian Americans as working for the Japanese government, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Executive Order 66, which called for the detention of thousands of Asian Americans. The continued American hatred of Asian Americans would continue to grow, and the resentment of the group did not appear to stop until 1965, when the Civil Rights Movement for African Americans who would take a foothold in the United States. As more and more African Americans began to speak out about the social injustice between white America and black America, white America would weaponize Asian Americans in the fight. Every household really emphasized the power of education and knowledge throughout the community. However, it would be white America to push the success of Asian Americans through education to marginalize African Americans and push the idea of conformity to our society, even through racism ideals. The idea is, if this minority can succeed through racial tension, why can't you? Famously wrote, in 1974, writer Arthur Chin once said, "Whites love us because we are not black." So the mold was set. A minority that instills the values of American culture, American work ethic, American education, mixed in with a little bit of colorism, and the identity of the model minority is created. With the model minority, you're fit into this box. You are good at math. In fact, you excel in math. You are nerdy. You wear suits. You are expected to excel in every scholastic subject. If you're a woman, you're all these things, but hypersexualized. You don't talk. You don't have opinions. You are submissive. If you do not conform to these model minority myths, you become othered and lumped in with all the other stereotypes to give to Asian Americans. To say that the model minority lasted quite a while, it did. Until it wasn't.
Shouted, "You ching chong mother, you better cover your mouths before you kill all of us."
Once the COVID-19 outbreaks happened, America went right back into their xenophobic, racist ways, and waves of attacks towards Asian Americans had begun.
With bullying and discrimination as he grew up. And here he is talking about recently being called coronavirus during a basketball game for the Golden State Warriors G League.
It happened during the game, but, I think one thing, at this point, I'm not really that shocked at anything.
Calling this the Chinese virus. There are reports of dozens of incidents of bias against Chinese Americans in this country. Your own aide, Secretary Azar, says he does not use this term. He says ethnicity does not cause the virus. Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's racist.
Now, this is just me just kind of talking to you guys. I didn't really write this part down, but I do want to talk about it. In order for us to really grow as a society, we have to understand that we're doing a very horrible disservice to our Asian American brothers and sisters. To blame a pandemic on them and to start attacking them, it really kind of goes back to how we normalize racism, how they were wanting to be accepted, just how African Americans wanted to be accepted, but we're not accepting these people. These things happen that we can't control, we as a society can't control, and then we look towards them as if it's their fault, and it's not their fault. It's nobody's fault. In order for us to grow, for us to become better as a society, we have to learn to take care of each other and also have to be aware of the stereotypes that we placed on minorities. And on this case, we place unfair stereotypes on Asian Americans, and we just wanted them to be a representation of white society, but we can't do that. I think it's unrealistic. And because it's so unrealistic, when this has happened, then America's turned on them, and that's not cool. I think at this point it's great to understand the differences. It's great to celebrate those differences and celebrate Asian Americans for their contributions to society. But the violence should stop. The violence is just reinforcing the idea that America will never be a great country. It will always be a racist country, as where we are now, and what we uncover almost every video that I make. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I know this one took a bit, but got a lot of things down the pike. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. And until next time, educate yourselves.